Welcome to Health Club with Julia. I'm your host, health coach, and registered dietitian, Julia Campagna. I'm on a mission to bridge the gap between looking your best and living your life to the fullest. After years of over-dieting, struggling with disordered eating, and destroying my social life, I finally found how to reach my dream physique without sacrificing the things I love. Now I'm sharing all my strategies and education with you. We'll be talking all things health, including hormones, metabolism, and lifestyle to help you cut out the confusion and start living. So get cozy and join the club. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Health Club with Julia podcast. I am so happy you are here. Today we are talking about one of my favorite topics of all time, which is birth control. And disclaimer, I'm not here to sway or judge you or anything like that. I don't want to be the deciding factor for you in a decision. Decision's totally up to you whether you choose to use it or not. It's your body, you are in control of it. But I do want to give you the best informed decision possible to make that decision. So this is what this discussion is all about. Not necessarily to say this or that is right, because there's really no right answer. It's what you want to do most with your own body. But I don't like when doctors kind of conceal information, and I am all for informed decision. So that is the little disclaimer on this episode, but I want to discuss some things about birth control, and really the topic that I want to discuss today is how I transition my clients off of birth control. But in order to talk about that, I first want to talk about what birth control is, what it does, and so we're going to start there. But there are a couple things that I do with my clients to help them transition off of that a lot of other people miss, probably because, like I said already, doctors don't give all the information on birth control, and so you don't know a lot of these things. And the amount of stories I've heard from women saying, I got off of birth control and I gained weight really, really rapidly, or I got off of it and it took me a long time to get my period back, or I got off of it and I had all these negative side effects that I went back on it. I've heard all of those stories, and some of them a few times, and that's what I don't want for you. If you are somebody who is thinking about getting off of it at any point in time, whether that's soon or in a few years from now or whenever, I want you to be equipped to be able to get off of it so that you have as little negative effects from coming off of it as possible. Now, everybody is different, and so yes, some people might struggle to get their period back for a couple months after, even if they've done the work beforehand getting off of it. Some people might struggle to get their period back for a little bit of time. Some people might gain a little bit of weight. Some people might have other issues from coming off of it. But a lot of the times when you do work first before coming off of it to help kind of prep your body to come off of it, you'll have a lot more success. Even if there's some negative things going on, it should be minor, if anything at all. And so that's kind of where I want to steer you and guide you on how do I prep my body to come off of it, because that is a goal of mine eventually. Again, no matter what time that is. So let's first talk about what birth control actually does, and then we'll get into how to transition off of it. So birth control, a lot of times doctors will say, or you may believe, because again we don't have a lot of information on birth control and female health, but a lot of the times doctors, people who are taking it, think that birth control is the answer for all of their problems. They think that it helps regulate their period, it helps to manage cramps, it helps to alleviate some of the heavy bleeding. It just basically takes care of all their issues. And while, yeah, short-term birth control might help with those issues, it is just a band-aid for what is actually going on with your body. If you have really heavy periods, do you have fibroids? Do you have estrogen dominance? What's going on a deeper level? So instead of just slapping, a band-aid over it in the form of this pill or any other form of hormonal birth control, why not get to the root cause of it? So a lot of people believe that that is what birth control does. However, it's quite the opposite. Birth control actually disrupts the pathway between the brain and your ovaries. It disrupts that. So everybody thinks that it's helping that pathway and it's regulating your period, but it actually disrupts that pathway. And if you think about it, it's really the only FDA drug that is meant to disrupt a function of the body. Think about that for a minute. That's kind of crazy when you think about it. You know, all these other drugs out there, they're meant to help the function of the body, and birth control is the only drug that is meant to disrupt a function of the body. It is meant to disrupt the pathway between the brain and the ovaries so that you're not ovulating, so you don't get pregnant. It's disrupting your natural pathways. And this can cause a lot of negative effects. That's where a lot of people struggle with this. It can, for one, make your periods worse when you get off of it. Because you're going from this disrupted pathway to then, in the snap of a finger, getting off of it, and now your body's trying to work again. So it can actually make periods worse. It can cause problems with fertility. Again, disruption in the pathway. It is making your body not have functioning reproductive hormones to stop you from getting pregnant. So then when you get off of it, and again your body's trying to work on creating that pathway again and ovulating and having all these sex hormones work properly again, you might be at risk for infertility issues. And I'm not saying that that is forever, but it can cause problems with fertility. And it really can do a lot more, but I can quite literally make a whole separate episode talking about what to expect with hormonal birth control and what you need to actually know about it so that, again, you can make a more informed decision for yourself. That could be, and I'm actually sitting here thinking about it now, I probably will make a separate episode on what to expect with hormonal birth control, what you can do, what you need to know, all the juicy information about that. But another disclaimer for you too is what works for one person may not work for another. And that is true for pretty much everything, that's including birth control. So everyone will have specific needs. But what I want to talk about today is general guidelines on what to do when wanting to come off of birth control. So again, remember, what works for one person might not work for another. Everybody has specific needs. Everybody has different things that they need to improve upon in terms of hormonal health. So I wouldn't just go suggesting taking all these supplements to everybody. You know, certain things are needed for certain people. But what I'm going to be talking about with how to transition off of it is just general guidelines that are reasonable for most people getting off of that. So again, you might do all the things that I say to transition off of it, and you might have some other consequences from birth control. Like I said, maybe you don't get your period for a while, and maybe you need more support in different areas. Come to me if you need more support in specific areas. This is, again, general guidelines for general people who want to get off of it and just want to help the body or help prep the body a little bit beforehand. So another disclaimer, do all these things, but you might need extra help in certain areas. But let's get into now, okay, so we know what birth control does. It actually disrupts the pathway in the body between the brain and the ovaries. So let's talk about, okay, I want to get off of it. What is the best way for me to do this to help alleviate any negative side effects from coming off it as much as possible? So there's a few things that I want to talk about here, but number one, do not come off of birth control cold turkey, please. Please. When I came off of birth control, I actually asked my doctor. I remember this very clearly. I asked my gyno, I said, you know, I'm thinking about coming off of birth control. Is there anything that I need to do before I do this? I emailed her. And she replied back, I don't remember exactly word for word, but it was just like one sentence long, and it was like, no, nothing specific that you need to do. Like, come in whenever and we'll talk about it, or something like that. It's like, okay, great. Luckily for me, I'm in this space. I enjoy female hormonal health. this is what I'm passionate about. And so, yes, of course, I did my research. And I read a lot of books, I listened to podcasts, I read articles and, scientifically backed articles, things that would just help me, because I was like, really, okay, should I just not do anything? Should I just stop it? No. Should I? I don't know. And so I did my research, and thank God I did my research first, because pretty much everything that I was reading was saying, don't just stop it. I'm like, okay, so I'm not just going to stop it. So I did prep my body for an entire month before I got off of birth control. So don't just cut it cold turkey. That is where you're going to have more of those side effects. And you just want to lessen the chance of things like the infertility issues and weight gain and loss of period, and which is called post-pill amenorrhea, by the way. That is a thing. Try to lessen that as much as possible. So, like I said, the body shuts down pathways between the brain and the ovaries. And so if you're not ovulating, if you're not having regularly, naturally functioning hormones going on in your body, you're not producing hormones optimally, especially progesterone. And so this is one of the reasons why we don't want to come off of it cold turkey, because your body is not doing any of those things. And so if you just cut it off right then and there, it's like, whoa, okay, now body's going into overload. So cold turkey can cause some menstrual irregularities, including amenorrhea. Like I said, post-pill amenorrhea is a thing. And it's just, it can cause a lot of things. So amenorrhea being that you have a loss of period. You can also have anovulatory cycles where you're bleeding but you're not ovulating. And yes, that is true. A lot of people might think, if I'm bleeding, I'm ovulating. Duh, I have a period. That means I'm ovulating, right? No, you can have a bleed without ovulating. That's called an anovulatory cycle, and that is also common from cutting cold turkey and just having negative side effects from stopping the birth control or hormonal birth control, whichever form you're taking, pill, whatever. So again, those are all reasons why we don't want to come off cold turkey. So what do we do then to help prep the body to come off of it if we're not just going to stop it and then address the issues? We want to try to mitigate those issues first and foremost so that they're not so bad. So the first thing that you want to do is replenish. Your body is depleted of nutrients while you are taking hormonal birth control. Specifically, vitamins B, E, selenium, magnesium, zinc. There's a few others in there as well, but those ones are going to be your main ones that are depleted when you're taking hormonal birth control. So what you can do is increase diet or take supplements to help increase your needs in these vitamins and minerals. So you could take a multivitamin, you can take a vitamin B, you can take magnesium, you can have selenium. Fun fact for you, if you don't want to take a pill, a Brazil nut, one Brazil nut has your daily dose of selenium. I used to do this every single day where I would just have one Brazil nut a day, and I was getting my selenium in, which I should probably actually continue doing now that I'm thinking about it. I haven't done that in a while, but it doesn't hurt to have. So yeah, if you don't want to take a pill, you can take, or you can have one Brazil nut, 1 to 2 Brazil nuts every day, and you're getting your daily dose of selenium, which is great. Other things that you can do to help increase your needs with these vitamins and minerals is, like I said, improve your diet. So things like increasing leafy greens, like I said, Brazil nuts, certain meats, poultries, fish, fatty fish, omega-3 fatty acids are really good. So just increasing your nutrient needs through whole foods, and that'll also help with getting in more of these vitamins and minerals. Again, you can add in some supplements that'll help with, so I already mentioned too that your body isn't producing hormones naturally when you're on hormonal birth control, especially progesterone. So to help things like progesterone, prostaglandins, you can add a couple other supplements that I would recommend. Magnesium, CoQ10, which is really great for brain health as well. Vitamin E, those all help progesterone and your prostaglandins, so those ones would be a good one to add in. You can add in DIM during ovulation and luteal phases. Now this is kind of coming off of that, but I would start this like 1 to 2 cycles before coming off of that, and then continuing it when you do come off of that. But again, DIM is one that is a little bit more specific for people, so don't feel like you need to take that, but it can help with improving hormonal function when you do come off of it. The second biggest thing that I would say is creating a safe space. Your body needs to feel safe, and that will help with this transition. So I do this a lot with my clients too, who are looking to come off of birth control. So we just kind of lower the intensity on a lot of things. So what I mean by that is, number one, training. Maybe lower intensity with your training, but like when you're prepping your body to come off of it, / early when you come off of it, you still will probably want to lessen your intensity until your body regulates itself. You can do this by either like lowering the weight and not lifting so heavy. You can lower the frequency, like the amount of times that you go to the gym. You can increase the amount of rest between your sets. You can also cycle sync. So I know that this is a little bit controversial in the space where people are like, yes, cycle sync. Some people are like, no, don't cycle sync, it's bullshit. I'm that in between where I don't think that it's necessary for you to do nothing when you're around your cycle. Movement actually helps with periods and menstrual cramps and all the things. So I don't think that you should be doing nothing. Like extreme cycle syncers think that you should do nothing the week of your period / late luteal phase leading up to your period. I don't necessarily believe that, but I don't also believe that it is just like go balls to the walls hard and you can still do everything. I'm that in between where you do actually have to listen to your body, and I do think that there's some strategy behind cycle syncing, especially for somebody who either has a hormonal imbalance or in this case is trying to transition off of birth control and just create this really safe space in their body. So you might want to really lower the intensity, especially during your late luteal phase and early menstrual phase. That's going to be really beneficial. So even when you're coming off of birth control, this needs to be apparent. So don't just go and do 5 HIIT classes a week or lift super heavy every time you lift, or all those things. You want to kind of back off of that and then and just like create this really safe space for your body in terms of training. So lowering your intensity with training short term until at least your body is kind of regulated after you're off birth control. Second part of this is coming out of a deep deficit. So clients who are in a really deep deficit before we get off of birth control, if that is their new goal, if that's what they want to accomplish, I take them out of that deficit and get them more up towards maintenance macros. This is going to help because being in a deficit, especially if it's for a long period of time, creates stress on the body. It is a stressor, and we want to lessen the stress as much as possible when trying to come off birth control, because once you do come off, there's a lot of things that your body will then have to start doing again that it's not used to, and that is also a stressor. So if we can release stress as much as possible for the body, getting out of a deficit is one of those. It also helps with these, I already mentioned, nutrition imbalances, vitamin and mineral imbalances that you might have from taking hormonal birth control. Having more of an intake, having a higher intake, you're more likely to be getting in more of these vitamins and minerals because you're just eating more. Hopefully your diet is mostly made up of whole foods, so if you're eating more whole foods, odds are you're likely getting more vitamins and minerals that you need that were replenished or that were lost during hormonal birth control. So for multiple reasons, we want to get out of a deep deficit. So getting back up towards maintenance macros is going to be ideal for getting off of it. The third thing about, creating a safe space within your body is kind of what I just mentioned, managing your stress, and that's in all forms, physical, mental, emotional. So obviously training is part of that. A deficit I just mentioned is part of that, but overall stress too. Like if you are in a place in your life where you are super stressed out with work or school or relationship issues or whatever's going on, you really need to get in a better place before you come off birth control, because again, if you're super stressed naturally, then having to come off of birth control and your body just going through all the stressors of, okay, let's try to ovulate again and let's get these sex hormones working optimally again, and just your body is then thrown into, okay, I got to start making my hormones. that's a big stressor. So we want to manage that as much as possible. Now, is stress good for the body? Yes, we do need some stress. So a lot of times people are like, no stress, zero stress, that's the goal. You do need some stress for your body. That's what helps us get out of certain situations. That's what helps us build some muscle. That's what helps us do a lot of functions. So yes, we do need some stress, but I'm talking about the chronic stress that is just like overwhelming for you, that we want to manage as much as possible. So do things like taking walks, listening to music. One of my favorites that I use with my clients is deep belly breaths. This is so easy. You literally just need yourself, and you can do it anywhere, anytime. I would suggest doing it like 1 to 3 times a day, at least, depending on how stressed that person is. But that's a really easy one to do. You can do meditation, you can read a book, there's a million things that you can do, draw, dance, but make sure that you're doing things every single day, and yes, I do mean daily, to help manage your stress and keep that at bay. So that's number 2, is creating a safe space for your body. Number 3, kind of goes with coming off of it and for more of like your first cycle back off of hormonal birth control. So things that you can do, because let's be honest, like I said, you're probably not going to have a 100% easy peasy first cycle when you get off hormonal birth control. Even if you're doing all of this work to help replenish nutrients lost and reduce stress and lower intensity with your training sessions and get out of a deficit, even if you're doing all of this work, odds are you're still going to have not the greatest cycle, especially the first one, after you come off of it. Again, when you think about it, your body is not responding to creating sex hormones. So when you abruptly come off of that, or when you just come off of it in general, your body's like, oh shit, I gotta start doing this now. I don't have this pill to stop that. Now it's actually, I gotta work. So odds are your first cycle might not be the best. I know for me, I'm trying to think back, it was like 2 years ago at this point that I got off birth control, but I actually felt like my first cycle was pretty okay, but my second and third cycles were not great, as in terms of it being heavier, it being a little bit more painful, and just wasn't like my norm. Now, of course, it's evened out from that, but yeah, early on when you get your first few cycles after birth control, it might be a little shitty, a little rocky, but these are some things that you can do to help with that. So number 1, teas. Think of warming foods and beverages. So broths, stews, tea, things that are warm, they help. So tea is a great one, and more specifically, red raspberry leaf tea is helpful for period cramps, so I would definitely recommend doing that, and I would have it even a couple days before you're supposed to get your period. And again, when you get like your first cycle or so, you don't know when like your first cycle is necessarily going to come. It depends, everybody's different. Some people get it within 30 days, some people bleed shortly after, some people they take a couple months to get their first cycle, so it depends. But red raspberry leaf tea, nettle tea is another great one to help with cycle health and making it not so shitty. And another one that I love is heating pads. Again, going back to the warmth, warmth is really great for overall relaxing your muscles, helping with blood flow too. It just helps, it's easier. So heating pads is a really great one to use as well when you're getting your first cycle back. So those would be my top 3 things: red raspberry leaf tea, nettle leaf tea, and heating pads. So I'll leave it at that, but just be aware that if you have a semi-shitty cycle when you are first coming off of birth control, even if you're doing all this work that I'm talking about, that's normal, it's okay. If it's ongoing and it's every single cycle after you come off of it, that's not normal, but it should even out after a few cycles. So that's just some things that you can do to kind of help when you're like, oh god, my first cycle is coming up, or I have it and this is not fun. It's okay. It'll even out, I promise you. But that's kind of my top tips. So making the body feel safe, getting out of a deficit, adjusting training, and trying to replenish nutrients lost. Now again, other people might need more specific things. I mentioned some supplements in here as well that you can take, but some people might need more specific things. So if you have more questions on them, feel free to let me know, DM me, and I can talk through that with you. But I want to also talk about, okay, so, right, we talked about transitioning off of birth control. I want to also talk about other safe options for birth control, because a lot of people think, oh my God, I'm coming off of birth control, I still don't want to get pregnant, what am I going to do? And that holds them back from coming off of it, which I get it. It is a little bit scary not having birth control, especially if you've been on it for so long. That's like your quote unquote safety net. But there are other options that you can do to not get pregnant. So one really important piece of this that I want to throw out there, because again, a lot of females don't actually know this, and it's kind of crazy because I feel like this is an important point to make, but you really can only get pregnant for about 5 days out of an entire month. 5-6 days. That's it. Like, your window is pretty short. It's around your ovulation window, and sperm can live up to about 5 days inside of you. So there's that. But an egg does not live that long. And so when you are ovulating, you pass the egg, it'll die off eventually, or like, you know, it'll just kind of go down and then you shed your lining. But you really can only get pregnant for 5 days. So I hope that that eases some of your worries about this, because people are like, I could get pregnant every single day of every single month, and I don't want that. That's really scary. And yes, you definitely have to be more cautious and aware if you're coming off of birth control and you still don't want to get pregnant. Yes, of course you do. But it's not as dramatic as every single day you have the chance of getting pregnant. That's not true. So that was just something I wanted to point out. But let's talk about some options that you can use to help prevent pregnancy. So number one is going to be BBT, basal body temperature. This is basically just tracking your temperature every single day and looking for trends. So when you take your temperature, you're usually like for a majority of the days, you are like normal temperature, which is what, 97, 97.5, something like that, before ovulation. When you ovulate, that number goes up, let's say 98 point something, and it will stay elevated until you bleed, and then it drops back down into that 97 range. So if you take a thermometer, so the one that I use is the thermometer that coincides with the app Natural Cycles. Take your temperature every single morning. Try to do this before you get up out of bed, before you even really like talk to the person next to you if you have somebody next to you. Try to do this first thing before anything, before you go on your phone, before you eat something, get out of bed, all this stuff. We want it to be like our baseline temperature for the day. So take it as soon as you wake up and do that every single day. You can be old school and track it by hand or like in your phone notes or whatever, but I do use the app Natural Cycles, which it automatically syncs from my thermometer and it just goes into the app, and then I can see the graph. It graphs it for you, and you can see the trends where it's, you know, that 97, 97.5 pretty much every day before ovulation, and then once you ovulate, it goes up, stays high, and drops back down. You'll see that trend in the graph. So that is one method. This one's probably the most important method if you're not using birth control, because it is pretty accurate and it will show you trends so you know what to look out for. I know that also the Oura Ring automatically syncs up, I think, to Natural Cycles as well. So if you have an Oura Ring, that will take your temperature for you every morning, so you don't have to get the thermometer and like do all that jazz. That I think also syncs with Natural Cycles. I believe that's the app that it syncs with. So if you have an Oura Ring, you could do that. Natural Cycles is, my subscription is $90 a year, which is, I can't do math, let me quickly do math. $90 a year is only $7.50 a month for this app, and it is